Okay, there's an issue that has been cropping up over the past 2 weeks that I have finally decided I'm gonna try and give an opinion on. Could be the wrong opinion, could be a little misinformed, but I'll just give my impression, and if you feel otherwise, I don't begrudge you. Jamal Khashoggi was apparently murdered by the Saudi government a couple weeks ago in Turkey, I believe in the capital city of Ankara. And I would say this: Jamal Khashoggi is somebody that I could care less if he's dead or alive. This is a person who I'll get in a second to what I think was the real issue at hand, why he was murdered, and how it came to be that he was in that embassy or consulate, whatever it was that day. But the fact is that the media, by hyping this, by calling him a quote unquote journalist for the Washington Post, this guy was an opinion guy. Okay, no, I don't feel that we should celebrate the deaths of somebody, uh, especially this guy getting dismembered. But we shouldn't just become suddenly up in arms and outraged over the fact that this is a person who, unfortunately, there's a lot of people around the world that meet the same fate, and nobody bats an eye. Nobody even cares. There's POWs that rot in prison for decades. Nobody cares. This guy was apparently in exile, according to the source I have, for only a little more than a year. And the fact is that the only reason that he's considered an opposition journalist today is because the faction of the Saudi royal family that he was in favor with is not really in power at the moment, and they're trying to get back in power, which could be the reason that so many people are hyping this up. The other thing is, if you look at his actions, now people are talking about, oh, he's a journalist, Washington Post, blah, blah, blah. The Washington Post employs a lot of pieces of shit. John Podesta works for the Washington Post, by the way. They've had that moron, Emily Brunig. They have some people like Hugh Hewitt, who is a quote-unquote conservative, but I personally don't trust him. I listen to his radio show sometimes because it's morning drive, but I don't really like him. You know, I respect some of his opinions. I don't really like him. The majority of the Washington... who else? Jennifer Rubin, by the way, also another clown, works for the Washington Post. The Washington Post, if they have such a concern for their journalists, and then now they're demanding that the United States basically stand up for their journalists. Well, they've had journalists in prison in the past under Obama who had been, I think reporting from... I believe it was in Iran or Pakistan. I think one of them was named Jason Rezaian. They called for any major policy change for the United States vis-a-vis Iran. And, I don't know if they should have, but they didn't. Okay, and maybe now, because there is a huge shift in American policy as far as the Middle East, especially as far as Iran, they have a problem with the U.S. cozying up to Saudi Arabia, which, yeah, that's something I think is legitimate. Let's question our ties with Saudi Arabia. I think that there are issues with that. We sell them a ton of arms. I don't really think that Saudi Arabia is a country that has earned the trust of anybody. They're basically undermining a lot of countries around the world, whether it's the Western world or whether it's countries in South Asia, including India and Burma. They don't really deserve the benefit of the doubt on anything. So I'm not excusing anything that Saudi Arabia is doing or telling you to trust what they did. But here's what I think really happened. Jamal Khashoggi was in the mix trying to, pressure the Saudi government to, I guess, not hassle him and his acolytes, the type of people who were really, they were trying to get back in the good graces of the leadership. And unfortunately, the person in the main obstacle to that is the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, and he's a little more of a pro-Western figure. But let's not split hairs here. I don't think that any of these people are really trustworthy, whether it's Mohammed bin Salman or Jamal Khashoggi or any of these people, the King Solomon himself, for example. Why should we trust them when there's documents that haven't seen the light of day that reveal their family's role, not just their country, but their family's role in 9/11 and various other terror-related crimes against the U.S. So what I think he really was trying to do was work out some sort of arrangement where they would pretty much let him go his merry way, possibly return to Saudi Arabia. They say he was there in order to, file for a marriage license to his new wife. I don't believe it. I really believe that the Saudi government, after having to deal with him and having to deal with whatever bullshit that him and they were throwing at each other, decided, we're going to trick this guy into thinking, let's cut a deal. You can stop talking smack about us, and we'll let you come back. And they basically double-crossed him and killed him. Or that is my theory of what happened. It might not be the right theory, but I can't for the life of me understand why he would even set foot in the building of the brutal country that he was born in and expect to come out alive unless he thought he had some sort of deal worked out. And he didn't. And I'll tell you what, this outlet that he started, the Middle East Monitor, I don't really think, it doesn't really rise to the level of actual credible journalism. It's just a biased I guess it's a pro-Islam, pro-Palestine, basically a blog site, does some reporting and everything, which he has every right to do, but don't make this out to be that he's some sort of a paragon of free journalism. You should understand that people like Jamal Khashoggi, who I've done a little background on, but I'm not entirely sure exactly everything about him. People like Jamal Khashoggi don't believe in the actual rights and liberties of mankind. What they really want to do is spread their particular theocratic beliefs around the world. And this is something that I think is a broader issue. When you have journalists killed like this in parts of South America, there are some journalists, of course, that get roughed up here in the U.S. You don't hear very much about it, maybe for a while, and depending on who the assailant is and who the victim is. I believe just this weekend there was a female journalist assaulted at a rally in Florida for gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum. I would say this: Jamal Khashoggi is basically a symbol of the establishment media sticking up for its own people and sticking up for the principles of basically world Islam, for lack of a better term. They if this had been a person who had been just some spare dick in the wind, they wouldn't care. But because he happened to be hooked up with them through his globalist connections that would like nothing better than to have more waves of terror unleashed in order to create more wars, nobody would have cared about this asshole. Okay? If it had just been some dude who was reporting for, whatever, for the Monterey Press or something, whatever. I don't even know if there's a Monterey Press. He was, he took a risk and he ate it. People are dismembered all the time over in the Middle East. Yes, it is abnormal that this would happen in a consulate. It's abnormal that Saudi Arabia would do this to a person of such a high profile. I think it's just a bizarre case. But I'm not going to lose sleep over a person who I actually am losing sleep anyway, but that's because I am a kind of an insomniac. But it's not over Jamal Khashoggi. Jamal Khashoggi was a person who kind of rolled the dice, and he crapped out. And eventually, I think this happens to a lot of people like him that are palace intrigue people. And the United States doesn't. I don't think we should just ignore it entirely, but it's not. It shouldn't make us cut off our relations with the Saudis. I think we just have to be vigilant and have to apply the pressure for them to stop doing the things that have been plaguing our relationship with them for decades. That's about it. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share the video, comment when it uploads, and subscribe to my other channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds. Also contribute to Patreon if you can. The link is below.